Philadelphia has gained an international reputation as a city with one of the toughest police departments in the world. It's a force of 7,500 men, shaped over the past 4 years into a formidable urban army, run by one man without political interference. His name is Frank Rizzo. He is a policeman's cop, often called the super cop. He holds more than 60 awards and citations, and has been mentioned as a possible successor to J. Edgar Hoover. The name Rizzo made headlines around the world last summer when he personally led an early morning raid on Black Panther headquarters.
Commissioner Rizzo.
It was in that raid that Panthers were forced to strip in the street before photographers who had been summoned in advance. Rizzo was in the headlines again a few days later. The Panthers were holding a national convention in Philadelphia, and there was fear that some militants, incensed at the raid on their local headquarters, might confront the police. Rizzo's answer became legend.
They're a little angry. They were humiliated. We took their pants off them to search them, you know. Only brave when they outnumber people, you know, meet. They said I hurled the challenge that I suggested, instead of laying an ambush, why don't you tell us where you're going to be? We'll give you the odds. We'll come and we'll, you know, okay, corral, you know. If they have their convention, fine, no problem. But all I can say, and they consider this a challenge. They break our law, we'll be there. Meaning? The police. We'll be there and we'll see who wins. And if you're a betting man, you bet on us.
Who are the police and what is their function in America? Ask this to 100 random people and you will find 100 different answers. People's opinions of cops and the police's role in society largely depends on a person's prior interactions with them and the way that they were treated and their political leaning. If you ask left-leaning people, you will hear answers ranging from the police are agents of the state with a monopoly on violence and need to be completely overhauled and reformed, to a slogan that says defund the police, which is decreasing the amount of money the state spends on law enforcement and heavily reforming training and police procedures that will lead to fewer civilian deaths. Seems to be a popular opinion, but that doesn't have the same ring as defund the police. I admit the slogan is kind of counterproductive, as it really doesn't get the correct point across. This gives people in opposition an easy straw man to pick apart. If you ask people on the right their opinions of police, you get answers ranging from they're doing a great job to they need more funding to help get these criminals off the street. The mistrust of police in Philadelphia can be traced back to one man and his philosophy, Frank Rizzo. Police scandals and crime have happened before and have happened since Frank Rizzo, but his handling of policing while he was first commissioner and then mayor set the tones for racial and police relations in the city from the day he was appointed commissioner in 1967, and even before that when he was in the ranks. Rizzo dropped out of high school to become a cop and follow in his father's footsteps. At 6'2", 250 pounds, he was a no bullshit tough guy type of cop. He had no problem beating the shit out of you to get the situation in his control. But with his stature, it often wasn't even necessary, but done anyway, out of spite. Break their heads is right. They try to break yours, you break theirs first, he once said. He rose through the ranks to deputy commissioner in 1963 and police commissioner in 1967. Rizzo summed up his philosophy in blunt terms. The way to treat criminals is spacco il capo, he said, as commissioner, using the Italian for break their heads. As commissioner, he boasted that he had the toughest cops in the world and that his police department was strong enough to invade Cuba. Once, as deputy police commissioner in 1965, Rizzo had his officers run over a group of mostly black student protesters at Girard College. In 1967, when Rizzo was police commissioner, Kenneth Salam was one of the handful of protesters who handcuffed himself outside the post office at 30th and Market Streets to fight for equal hiring practices. Kenneth Salam was active in the civil rights movement in Philadelphia. The cops came and cuffed them with their arms between their legs, so they had to hop to the police wagon. You couldn't walk like a person, he said. When they stumbled out of the wagon, the white officers had formed two lines on either side of the ramp, cursing them with a racial slur and saying, "You want freedom? Come through then," Salam said. Then they beat us. They were hitting us so hard, it was like running a gauntlet. The nightsticks were long and wooden, but inside there was a bar of steel. Some were worn out and the steel was exposed. When the steel hit the ground, you could see sparks. I thought, they're trying to kill us, he said. These are just a couple of countless instances of Rizzo and the police department's treatment of blacks from the 60s onward. An antagonistic relationship with the department was forming thanks to one of the most openly racist politicians in Philadelphia history.
The weekend passed without incident, but Rizzo's tough image was intact. Then, a month ago, after 27 years in the department, after working his way through the ranks to the top, he decided to change jobs.
This is our man, Frank Rizzo. I'm experienced Philadelphia. Man, it's got to bring love and happiness. Just as I'm back,
He resigned from the force to seek the Democratic nomination for mayor. Interviewed at his temporary campaign headquarters in a body and fender repair shop, Frank Rizzo the cop is now Frank Rizzo the politician.
You know, if you could list priorities, I would say that the economy is the number one part. The economy of the nation, and even the cities. You know, then we have law and order, or the safety of the citizen. That has to be right up there, right below the financial conditions of any community. Then we have to talk about housing, about employment. These are all important. You know, as a policeman, we see firsthand the conditions that cause young people to become criminals. But there's nothing the police chief can do about it. Housing, no work, running the streets day and night, no education or a poor educational system. And this was one of the other reasons I decided I knew that I had sufficient knowledge to do something about that. I'm not going to say that I can, you know, wave a magic wand and cure all these ills, but one thing I'm certain of, that I have the dedication and the ability to work hard to change it.
In many ways, he's still the chief, the warrior who knows and loves his men, who honors them, as he did recently at the funeral for a patrolman killed in action. To many Philadelphians, he is a folk hero in his own time, an honorable man who places high value on tradition. To others, especially those in the ghettos, the very thought of Frank Rizzo as mayor is appalling. Many of them blame him for a legacy of fear and distrust in the city that still provokes confrontations between citizens and authorities. This recent protest was directed at two policemen accused of shooting a young black man. The policemen were formally charged, but those charges were later dismissed. Once again, an incident involving police had provoked militant and divisive rhetoric.
We have to take the position that any black person who inflicts any injury, up to and including death, on any police officer in the black community is clearly carrying out an act of justifiable homicide. So what we are saying is this: if we are to be killed, then any killing that is done in retaliation is justifiable homicide.
Critics of Frank Rizzo blame him for polarizing the city. He says, not so.
I consider myself in the middle. I come from a background that wouldn't permit the tag liberal, ultra-liberal. If you're talking to me about human rights, if we're going to use the tag liberal, I'm a liberal. If you talk about crime and permissiveness and all the other things that cause disorder and confusion in our society, then I'm a conservative. But I would rather use the expression, I'm against the people on the extreme left. I don't want them. I don't want the people on the extreme right. I want the people that are in the middle, and I'm positive that that's the majority, because this is the way I operate, and this is my background. As far as my opponents are concerned, I've been a policeman a long time, and I've learned one thing as a policeman: you never underestimate your opponent. You always get in there faster with more than's necessary, and you overpower.
In a day and age of no social media or body-worn cameras, much of this happened in the dark. Sure, the black people of the city knew it was happening, but the wider public brushed off any accusation with all the old cliches. Not helping was the fact that the police department was openly hostile to any accusations that came their way, and that further inflamed tensions. In a civil rights suit filed in 1979, the Justice Department accused the Philadelphia Police Department of shooting nonviolent suspects, abusing handcuffed prisoners, suppressing dissension from within the ranks, and generally engaging in a pattern of brutal behavior that shocks the conscience. The sweeping charges were leveled against the entire police department, which is the fourth largest in the country. It was the first time the federal government had moved against alleged police brutality by suing an entire police force rather than individual officers. The suit, filed in federal district court in Philadelphia, accused the city of Philadelphia, Mayor Frank Rizzo, and the police department of violating the basic civil rights of persons of all races, colors, and national origins. Major allegations included in the 28-page complaint filed by the federal government are use of deadly force, shooting criminal suspects who ceased flight and offered to surrender, shooting nonviolent suspects who could be apprehended without the use of deadly force, and recklessly shooting innocent bystanders. Street procedures, stopping pedestrians and motorists without probable cause, and then physically abusing them protesting, physically abusing handcuffed prisoners, detaining persons without proper or reasonable cause, and conducting illegal searches and seizures. The suit said that the Philadelphia police shot approximately 75 persons every year and received more than 1,000 complaints a year. In 1978, the Philadelphia police shot 17 unarmed people, killing 8. In one confrontation, an officer shot and killed a naked man armed only with a tree limb. Then, the 1980s and the crack epidemic hit the city, and it devastated a lot of the black community. This drug obliterated some communities, and the effects are still being seen to this day. The department adopted reforms under Commissioner Morton Solomon, an appointee of Mayor Bill Green in the early 1980s, and that led to a dramatic drop in police shootings. That progress was upended in 1985 when the city, under then Mayor Wilson Goode, dropped a bomb on a house occupied by members of the radical group M.OV.E, sparking a blaze that devoured an entire neighborhood.
Nobody can call them weird, odd, urban guerrillas, cultish. They aren't odd, they're little kids. And they were burned to death. No matter what anyone thinks about the adults, and what anyone says whether or not those adults contributed to the deaths of those children, the fact of the matter is that the deaths of those 5 children is inexcusable, intolerable, and should not have occurred in a civilized society.
People then, there was still, is now, African-American area neighborhood. You still have now retired doctors and teachers and principals who live in that area. It's always been a great area. People always thought it was a nice place to live. It was just ironic that M.OV.E. decided to go into that neighborhood and take over and make their move or make a stance as to who they were, what they believed, and how they wanted to affect the neighborhood.
M.OV.E. was founded in the early 1970s by this man, Vincent Leapart, a local handyman who renamed himself John Africa.
Your brother.
M.OV.E. members wore their hair in dreadlocks and lived in communes. All members took the last name Africa.
We believe that man's lifestyle is wrong, and we're about getting rid of it.
What M.OV.E. wanted to get rid of was quite simply the evil establishment, including the government, which they said was alien to life itself.
M.OV.E. means light, the air, the sun, the rain. That's why they will never stop moving. They will never stop what's right. They can't stop what's right. You can't stop the air from blowing. You can't stop the sun from shining. That's why they never stop the M.OV.E. organization.
John Africa was teaching people one very simple thing, that life is the priority. There is nothing more important or more powerful than life.
There ought. We were the religion of life. Where is it written that we could not have a religion of our own? What John Africa did was expose the lie in the system, uncover it.
Could you describe what you mean by the word the system, please?
The system, the establishment, you.
Small vocal minority among us seeks to destroy the heritage of 1776. We must be ever vigilant that this minority does not impose its philosophy on the unwilling majority of Americans.
Philadelphia has gained an international reputation as a city with one of the toughest police departments in the world. It's a force of 7,500 men, shaped over the past 4 years into a formidable urban army, run by one man without political interference. His name is Frank Rizzo. He is a policeman's cop, often called the super cop. He holds more than 60 awards and citations and has been mentioned as a possible successor to J. Edgar Hoover.
They was falsely arrested, right? They was falsely arrested. They send them, they had them in Holmesburg Prison, Detention Center, House of Correction, Gratis, for places like that. All across the state, they locked them up for illegal charges and had them all in jail. The MOVE people demanded, just like they demanded this time, that these people be released. And because of the community support, right, Rizzo and them saw that if the community kept supporting them the way they was, then they would be showed in the world how mad and crazy that they really were.
Now what I say, let's forget all the rules of this great country we live in. I will go back to that wall with the three of you. Just me. You're a crumb creep coward. You can't take, you won't stand up to him.
I'm standing up. We're not here to fight. We're here to get some answers to some questions. That's all.
I want to fight you.
Why is that?
Because you're a crumb creep lush coward.
You don't even know me, Mayor.
You are a lush. I can tell by looking at you. I was a cop all my life, and I know a lush when I see one, and you're a lush. You're going to have a hell of a story on that one. Play every word of it, crumb.
The key issue was police brutality. It was a legitimate issue.
So he can kill everybody in this South and justify it by using public opinion. So everybody out there to understand that we will not back down for Rizzo.
MOVE had a good cause, it had good things, good issues, and so forth, but the way they conducted themselves in the public arena was questionable.
As a result of MOVE's demonstration strategy, MOVE members were arrested on a regular basis.
Confrontation started with authority, and then it wound up that we was going to court, and then the confrontation started with the courts and the judges, and it just snowballed into, one confrontation after other against the system.
You have to understand that the MOVE organization had challenged the authority and the jurisdiction of every courtroom that any MOVE member ever stepped in, and they challenged it, vigorously, and they challenged it from the outset, so that the power of the court to hear their case, whatever case there might have been, was always challenged by MOVE, that you don't have authority, you don't have the power to hear this case.
When MOVE first surfaced as an above-ground chapter, we would work with people in the community. We had a program where guys would come to us from the prisons and say, man, we need your expertise to help us get off drugs and, and to live a hard-working existence. They trusted us.
If you look at what happened to MOVE, both in 1978 and the shootout that they had with the Philadelphia Police Department, as well as in May of 1985, in both instances, the West Philadelphia community that they had lived in, it was their neighbors that were engaged in filing complaints to the police.
1981, MOVE relocated its headquarters to Osage Avenue in this middle-class neighborhood of West Philadelphia. There, MOVE's lifestyle soon began troubling their new neighbors.
They walked around properly naked. Their houses were loaded with animals, all stray animals. The people look like they come out of caves.
The houses smell. They live in stench.
They were saying all kinds of things about MOVE. They were saying things like we throw shit out of windows and we pee on each other, and just anything to make people think of MOVE as just like subhuman.
The first contact with the police department grew out of MOVE members and some kind of display of arms.
No. See, I know you're lost. Listen, we were pushed into the criminal justice system. I think maybe about 150 arrests, maybe even more than that, for misdemeanors. I mean, and contempt of court. We were so engulfed by the criminal justice system that they were giving us something like $50,000 bail for disorderly conduct.
Would be the buildup of these complaints and the tension within the community that would demand police intervention.
Why do you think the city wants him out of here? What do you think the real reasons for why do you think Rizzo is coming down this hard when the Drexel,
money,
profit, and aside from that, it's a personal vendetta. It's a personal vendetta. All right. All right.
The area that MOVE was in, what they call like Drexel, just like Temple University, they gobbling up all the land here, right? So they was taking all that land and they didn't want MOVE there. That's the main reason that Rizzo was attacking the MOVE organization, not only because he didn't like them, it's because the Drexel University was pushing it. You know what I mean? They was pushing that, they wanted them out of the area, right?
That strikes at the core of a value system. And so too often, because we want to preserve and maintain property values, because we want to preserve and maintain middle class values and even upper class values, those two things will run counter to the values that MOVE was engaged in. In other words, what does it mean to be a neighbor? What does it mean to engage in a community, right? And who is to dictate to the community what values are going to be promoted? And so for John Africa, embracing, for example, the environment, for embracing, for example, animal rights, embracing, for example, black liberation theology as well as black power theology, these values ran counter to middle and upper class whites and middle and upper class blacks. So for me to be a property owner in this West Philly neighborhood, you know, I need my property values to be maintained, if not go up. But if I have a MOVE member or a MOVE family next door, the perception is, oh, my property values are going down because they are engaging in loitering, litter, noise pollution.
We call it institutionalized racism. And that's exactly what it was. Because we were black and because the institution has a way of handling black people through the system, you understand? It didn't matter whether Wilson Good was black or whether Wilson Good was white. It's the institution. It's the governmental institution. This is the way we handle black people.
As the mayor of the city, I accept full and total responsibility for decisions made to in fact go in and to evacuate the Osage Avenue house. I stand behind those persons who made those decisions. I support my commissioners, I support my managing director, and I want the people of the city to judge me by that decision.
What you call an educated Negro with a BA or an MA or a BS or a PhD?
I'll tell you, you call him a nigger. That's what the white man calls him, a nigger. See, you have to understand this type of thinking. And to understand this type of man, you must understand that historically, there were two types of slaves, the house Negro and the field Negro. Now, the house Negro, he lived in the house, next to his master, in the big house, either in the basement or up in the attic. He dressed pretty good, he ate pretty good, what the master left him. He loved his master. I say he loved his master better than the master loved himself.
MOVE women and children were huddled under wet blankets in a basement garage while a police video crew took these pictures.
That.
You said we know Rizzo want to see us dead, all right, but I'm saying, you know, only reason why he want to do that is to stick his chest out. All right, we saying like right now, because there ain't no white members in here, he's gonna try to take advantage of them. So that's the only reason why he's talking about coming in here. That's the only reason why Lindell is pushing this issue, because there ain't no white members in here. All right, they don't care about nobody black, man. You know that.
Over the next hour, the fire moved down through the house and began to spread to adjacent homes. It wasn't until 90 minutes after the fire started that MOVE members tried to escape. At that time, witnesses heard gunshots coming from the back alley.
Some shooting started. Could you hear shooting? What did it sound like?
It was like that.
Police gunfire forced MOVE to stay in the house.
That's when we started yelling at kids coming out, and then they opened the garage door.
I know they heard us. I know they heard us.
They're coming out the back. We were saying, we want to come out.
And what did the other children do? Did they do the same thing?
Yeah.
Were any of the children crying?
Yeah, we all were.
A massive police operation in Philadelphia that culminated in the helicopter bombing of the headquarters of a radical group known as M.OV.E. The fire from the attack incinerated 6 adults and 5 children and destroyed 65 homes. Despite 2 grand jury investigations and a commission finding the top officials were grossly negligent, no one from city government was criminally charged.
The police brutality that we've been talking about was finally exposed to the world, as not only did the city literally drop a bomb on its own black residents, something that we've never seen before or since in the history of this country, but caught on camera was the brutal beating of Delbert Africa. In surrendering to the police, hands in the air, he was knocked down, kicked, and beaten. An arrest captured by cameras and broadcast nationwide. The images became a symbol of police brutality to some in Philadelphia. 11 people, including 5 children, died inside the M.OV.E. building. In that aftermath, the black community got left to clean up the remnants of a neighborhood that the government destroyed, and Frank Rizzo got a statue outside of City Hall. That statue is a microcosm of how Philadelphia has viewed politics and race relations in the past 50 years. And it's tearing down in 2020, not only refuting the sentiments held by a lot of racists in Philadelphia, but pointing to a sentiment that police relations aren't going to be business as usual. As Frank Rizzo and his law and order approach to policing has died off, it's left in its wake a vacuum. It left a public that is very much aware of the misconduct and outright abuse of the Philadelphia Police Department, but a department that is unwilling itself to change.